Welcome to Dark Loops Productions. Why is this so good? A podcast for discussing something we find in pop culture that just makes us ask the question, why is this so good? Well, I don't know, maybe today we'll ask, is it good? We've come together to discuss Alice in Borderland. I have some fantastic colleagues with me here. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher at Illinois State University. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, tell the audience a little something about what you do, and then just for kicks, your favorite character from the show. And we'll start with Rio.
Sure. My name's Rio Shigeta. I am an actor by training, currently in insurance by trade, but a insufferable anime otaku by nature. And with that, manga along with that, and Alice in Borderland, based on a manga, was one of the things that came across my attention. And this one has a lot of connections to a lot of other media, current and past. Did you want us to talk about sort of one thing right now, or just ourselves?
I said favorite character, but that's not a rule. It's just something to let the audience know a little something about how you feel about the show.
And one of the characters that, there are a lot of characters and a lot of facets that I relate to, but aside from that, like one that I like to watch and enjoy what happens in the story is probably Chishia. That's a boy. That's it.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. How about you, Marissa?
Okay. So I'm Marissa Jordan-Lenz. I am Mr. Old Scott Dudes here, daughter. I also am a home visitor. So like in the social work field, working with like families and kids on like their development and bonding and stuff. And then as far as my interest in like Alice in Borderland, I honestly am just like super into kind of Asian culture and media, just like period. So this came across one of my Discords and I just kind of jumped in. And my favorite character is also Chishia, just because why not? Like, why would he not be anybody's favorite? So
there you go. Well, this is Marissa's second appearance on Why Is This So Good? Her first was a couple years ago when we did an episode on BTS.
Oh, yeah.
So that's available in Dark Loops Productions if you like, where she got chewed out a little bit for calling BTS ARMY fans a WeTat hostile. So
I'm here for it, but they're a little sick.
Fantastic. Also on the show, Lorran Garrison. Lorraine, please tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on here. My name is Lorran Garrison. I am a school psychologist out here in San Diego. I am also the co-founder of a little publishing company called Little Brainstorm, where we create fun activity books and stories for social emotional learning for kids. We want help kids to think outside the box. So that's me.
Fantastic. And who is your favorite character?
Okay, so I'm torn between, now is Chota also Shishia? I'm getting them mixed up, right? Is that the same character?
Chota is one of his friends in the beginning. Chishia is the Cheshire Cat character, the white hair.
Yeah.
Yes. I love him. He's one of my top favorite too, but I'm a big fan of Cunha. Did I say that right?
Quina.
Quina, yeah.
The karate.
Oh.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
I'm a fan of her. Yes.
So go ahead.
Those are like my top two, and of course, they were buddies, so how could they not be my favorites? And so, but there was so much hate for them, so I'm here to talk about them and defend them.
Oh, I love it. This is all right. So now we're starting the after dinner vibe. Before we jump in, I gotta tell you guys, my favorite game is the King of Clubs. My favorite character is Cumia. I'm not sure if I pronounced that name correctly, but there's a philosophy there that I live and that I love, and I'm so stoked stoked to be able to talk about it with you guys, because I think I watched that episode and I texted Marissa, "Oh my God, have you seen that?" No, Dad, you're way ahead of me. So I've asked everyone to come up with their favorite character, favorite line, favorite scene, favorite episode, whatever it is. Talk about it for a bit, and then we'll all talk about that. So the floor is open for whomever would like to go first.
I don't want to.
I mean, I'll go. I'm just trying to quickly look up what the name of the game was, but it's the Seven of Hearts game. It's where everything changed in the series. Like this is where you're like, oh, this isn't three friends going through deadly trials to prevail story. This is a different kind of story, you know.
Right.
And like I was saying before, you know, this isn't something new, this sort of battle royale style of storytelling. And for some reason, I feel like it's very prevalent in Japanese media from like early to mid 2000s into the teens. And then it kind of bled over internationally into the things like the Hunger Games and the Purge, I would even say.
No, well said.
And yeah, and so the reason that I like the series as a whole, and I think that sort of is encapsulated in this game and how it plays out, is because it's all sort of an exploration, I think, of the transition from youth to adulthood, finding one's purpose, and like, you know, what does it mean to be a person, to be alive, to be a member of society, to be a fully fledged person, right? And it's all these different people's discovery. A lot of the characters, the main characters, the ones that we're meant to, I guess, relate with, are younger and in that sort of transition age. And in Japan, that's also a really big transitional time, going from a student to an employee to a member of society, shakaijin, as they say. Shakaijin meaning society person, you know. And I think a lot of kids sort of struggle with that. I know that I did, in terms of like, where do I fit in? Do I fit in? Should I fit in? You know, and back to the game. What's interesting about Alice in Borderland and the games that happen is that they're all sort of like condensed moral and philosophical and ethical experiments, right? You give people these set of rules and you just sort of observe, if we're, you know, standing in the position of the dealers, maybe, to see what happens. And maybe a bad example because they're also pawns. But what changed for me was that there's a way to idealize storytelling and people. And, you know, there'll be a way that the hero can save everyone. There's going to be the way that everyone comes together and can do this right. And what happens in this game is that, of course, they try. Immediately it breaks down because of the rules. And then at the end, something happens that would never happen in real life. So you keep going back and forth like, no, people aren't going to sacrifice themselves. That only happens in manga and anime and drama. But at the same time, it goes from a completely unidealized story of like everyone eventually just is going to want to kill each other. That's the nature of man. And then it flips back at the very end to, no, friendship is real, that you actually can believe in others, and that sometimes, you know, sacrifice is worth it for the hero to survive, or that people can make peace at the last moments. And it just, I ping pong back and forth so much in that one game of like, this is good, this is bad, this is real, this is unreal, this is ethical, this is unethical. That was really fun, I guess, for me. And I think where I was hooked, like I knew that this was a series I wanted to watch the rest of at that point.
So is that the game where he lost? I mean, this is spoiler open. It's been out, so say whatever you want, because I'm definitely going to talk about the end, right? So
That's with the sheep and the wolf.
The
And
hide and seek game.
what's that?
It's a hide and seek.
Hide and seek.
game.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. All right.
With
all
the
right.
collars in the what's that called with all the plants and the trees and in the
Right.
glass, you know.
The botanical gardens.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
like
Botanical gardens.
third episode or something like that in
Mhm.
season 1. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. Because I had the number 3 in my head, but you're right, because it's the third episode, and it's like they did the Ned Stark thing in the third episode, not the last
right.
episode of the season. So yeah, I this ping pong thing you talked about, it's everything you said there, and then is this good? You know, and I'm trying.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to buy. Is this good storytelling? Am I gonna be embarrassed if I say it's good at a party and most people think it isn't? You know, and so I think there's a skill in making people go through those, right? And I don't think it's unintentional. I think it's completely intentional on the part of the writers and the creators, and that's why some people when I went on Reddit, some people called it third grade tripe, and other people said it's fantastic, and that's the point. It just finds all the joints. And even to the point where you're thinking if it's any good, even though you keep watching. Anybody else react to Rio's comments?
I'm gonna have to, throw in the negative side here, and
Sure.
I'm so sorry. I have a lot of love for it because I think acting wise, cinematography, character wise, all of those things really flowed really well. I like horror and I like psychological horror. I've come for myself personally as a person, after having a child, my son's like 11 and he kind of, is into some of these things. But like after having a child and grown up a little bit, I'm not so much into the gore as much anymore, only because I've seen a lot of gore now and I've seen, in real life what it's like. And, being a school psychologist, I get to see it in real life in schools happening. And I worry about, school shootings. I mean, it's a real threat. It's something that I go to work. I mean, that's the thing that I think about. So, some of the gory scenes were hard for me and I had to fast forward through some of that. Right. So what I do appreciate, though, is, like I said, the beauty, the writing, the philosophy. So I grew up on Guam. So Guam has heavily influenced by Japanese culture. So in elementary school, I had to learn Japanese. It was one of the languages that we had to choose from. It was either Spanish or Japanese. I mean, everyone has a choice of French or, whatever. Italian, I remember, here in high school and college, but me, it was Japanese and Spanish. So I loved that, they did stick very closely to Japanese culture, which is, compared to the United States, right? It's individualism versus collectivism. And so that was like, I love that. And I knew where the story arcs were going. I was like, for American audience, it'll twist it on its head because, Americans were cynical and we think everyone's out for themselves, but not in Japanese culture. That's like one of the big taboos in it. And, it's like very un-Buddhist. And so I saw a lot of the Buddhist philosophies, which I loved. And I thought that was fantastic. And they did that really well. And I think that's why I love Shishia, one of my characters that I like. I hear that he's different in the manga. So now I'm curious and I do want to pick up the manga because of all the hate that Shishia has had. So my biggest criticism of the whole series, though, is that what bugs me to no end is that they set up these rules and and then they don't follow them, or it's too fantastical. So for example, like Yasugi, she's the rock climbing person.
Usagi.
Usagi. Yeah. So I used to rock climb. And so I was just like, nope, not even close. Like going, soloing. Okay, I get it. But like, even when you solo, I mean, but that was the setup, right? Like Dad did. So spoiler, sorry. Dad did all of these awful things. And But like her, like jumping from one balcony, I mean, like even the world's top like boulder, I mean, all of these things, like it bothered me to no end that she was the only one that had magical powers. And I'm guessing maybe in the manga it might be different, that she had these super feet powers. I mean, but like if she's gonna have it, like give everybody else, or don't have her give her the superhero power, right? So that's that was like one of my big criticisms. I was like, oh, but anyways, Japanese philosophy did really, really well on that, and I really appreciate that, seeing that as an audience, like this, all the like what Rio was saying, blending that, having that coming of age, that importance of the main character falling in love with rock climbing girl and things like that. So that was nice. So
yeah, I gotta say, I watching it, there was like in the King of Spades game when she's jumping across these vast gulfs between trailers, the whole superhero thing kicks in, and then you think, oh, it's just wires, and you ping pong. What the hell, And I will say, I was experiencing this through Hunger Games, Squid Game eyes. And so I was experiencing the plot analytically as if what the characters were supposed to be doing was something that was really happening in an alternative universe until I got to the end.
Right.
And then when I got to the end, I recognized that this is a fantasy. And none of this is linear. None of this is analytic. And it was weird because it suddenly transformed my experience of all of it. In other words, I forgave. Not only did I forgive all the things that I thought were silly, I said the whole point of this was for them to have those nuggets of identity crisis. And then I'm thinking, yeah, but why all the gore, as you said, Lorraine? Well, that's kind of how we tell stories now. I mean, one of the things I wonder is, do we have to keep the gore at such a high and the violence at such a high level to keep people watching? And in other words, these things are commercial products, right? These people are making these things. They love the stories and they've got budgets. They're trying to make money. And so they're competing with all kinds of other scripts before they even, take a shot, record anything. So I'm just wondering to what extent, a lot of the violence we're seeing is more commercially driven than morally driven, right? It's just things people think they need to do to tell stories now. Anyway, the points I want to make there is the end. I loved the end. I loved the way it reorganized everything I'd just seen in a way that Hunger Games didn't. Hunger Games stayed analytic from the beginning to the end. It was all supposed to really happen, and they were all really supposed to have said those things. I love Squid Game, and at the same time wasn't the biggest fan of the end. And that's because it didn't give itself any poetic grace. This show gave itself this huge moment of poetic grace at the end when you read, oh, it's a fantasy. Oh, it's the afterlife. Oh, it's Aesop's fables in a sense, right? And okay, I can do that. So agree with everything on the violence, and not sure why it's there so much.
I do, Scott, like the ending portion, and this is same in the manga as it is in the show. The last game, the tea party and the croquet, when they're sitting with Mira, and she gives them all these sort of, are they real hypotheticals?
Yeah.
As if like the writer was like, here are a bunch of my ideas that I was considering for the ending of this.
Yes.
In the form of a character trying to brainwash my main characters. But actually, I went with this one. Here you go.
Yeah. It totally worked, though.
Oh, yeah. I loved it.
I was in it the whole time. Like every new scenario was like, oh, that happened. And it's like, oh, wait, no, that happened.
Oh, wait,
like,
no, it isn't.
Yeah, every new thing was just like, oh, that could be it. That could be it. That could be it. Like, I was here for it.
Back to your point, though, Lorraine, about the superpowers. I think that I noticed the same, especially earlier. And I think as far as the show went, they did sort of lean into it. And since it's such a like action oriented, like visual medium, that you tend to get drawn to the things that are moving and things that are happening. What I will say is that earlier in the manga, it seems like the characters are sort of archetypal in that way and do each sort of have this superpower, to the point where like each of the characters, and this happens in the show too, is categorized. They're like specialty diamond game, specialty spade game, whatever it is. And you know, while Usagi, yes, is a mountain climber, and I have no idea as to the veracity of her abilities, it's sort of like expressly shown that Alice's ability is this final moments analytical ability to see things that others don't, to notice and put together the clues. And then Chishiya is supposed to be this basically genius that picks up games and numbers and strategies at the drop of a hat, so to speak. And then you have characters like Agni, who are, you know, the big brute superpower characters. But what I'll say is that they move away from that, at least in terms of the manga. I'm going to keep referencing this because that's what I just read, as opposed to the show that I did watch. I watched the first season twice because I watched it. I made my fiance watch it with me, and then we watched the second season together. But the moment where Usagi jumps the containers, right? It is made much more clear, I think, in the source and the manga, that is a jumping point for her in her character. Like it's very metaphorical, actually, what she's doing. Yeah, it's a jump to save her life and running away, but it's very much, I mean, like panel next to panel, like here's what's happening interior, here's what's happening exterior. Like it was right after she gets in that fight with Alice. She's not ready to move forward either in the world or in their relationship or in her life. And she makes that decision when she jumps, and that allows her to make the jump that the guy behind her doesn't.
Right.
So what I guess my point is that some of the superpower stuff that happens, because we are able to now know what we know and look back, the supernatural moments are supernatural because of that. While we have to believe to some degree of verisimilitude that what's happening in Borderland is diegetic, it's actually all, you know, experiential. It's all in our mind. It's all technically in Alice's, but a collective mind. So reality gets stretched a lot, right? But it gets stretched in important moments. Where like there's a transition, there's a change in the character. I mean, at the very end, we see it the most, where everything's like completely fantasy bonkers everywhere. I mean, explanation, drugs, but that's sort of, you know, the point is that when people and reality gets stretched, it's because the characters are getting stretched to the breaking point, to a changing point, and they snap, you know.
That
For
makes
better
sense.
or worse. Yeah.
It sounds like I do need to pick up the manga, and it just didn't translate into the TV show, because that's what I would have loved to have seen, is that dark contrast between reality and the fantasy, because I only saw it in the one character. Like, if we're going to take that rule, then, you know, see that in the role, you know, like if she is supposed to be that genius, I want to see more of that, right? If the main character is supposed to be this genius, you know, let's see more of that twist. I mean, like Lovecraft Country, for example, had a suspense. Last of Us had suspense, but we didn't need to see all that gore. Going back on Dr. Jordan's, you know, conversation, like, yes, okay.
Oh, please call me Scott.
All right, Scott.
It's actually
Call
really
me
weird for
Scott,
me to
yeah.
like register.
This is an after dinner conversation.
All right. So anyways, yeah, like Like I love Get Out, for example. I mean, some people don't even consider The Help, as a horror, but like, for people of color, that might be like considered as horror, right? But like that, you didn't need to see gore. It was already, psychologically like horrifying as it is. So, like I'm a huge fan of Last of Us. I'm a huge fan of Get Out, all of those. And I think, Alice in Borderland has that concept, but sometimes it lost me with some of that gore stuff. I do really like the King of Spades game. That was one of my absolute favorite games. The psychological games, we're looking at that in particular, but yes.
Well, I want to follow up. I mean, I agree with you about the kids and the violence. And, back in the days of Beavis and Butthead, everybody thought it was funny to laugh at Beavis and Butthead. But what the 5-year-old watching their 15-year-old brother watch it doesn't get is they're not laughing with Beavis and Butthead. They're laughing at Beavis and Butthead. And so, Riss and I watched Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood when she was 12. And it's like, whoa, we got to stop this. And she goes, no, Dad, they're this, and I'm fine. But the point is, I was there. And so if I had watched this with kids watching this by themselves who aren't at a level of sophistication similar to the conversation we're having here, they don't have a frame for understanding that violence, but nonetheless, it still gets in. And I think that's one of the things that we're suffering from is unguided. To be honest, when I was raising my kids, when they lived here, I used these things as teaching tools. I used television as a conversation starter. Sure, it was entertainment. And at the same time, when they saw stuff like that, it was guided. I have no idea what they were streaming when they were by themselves, right? And that's the world we live in. But I agree with you, this unguided excursion to excessive violence is probably having impacts we don't even have an idea how to understand.
For sure. Honestly though, so it could just be because I'm 24 and have grown up in this kind of violence age. I actually was able to just kind of like brush past it. Like that was very minuscule in the things that bothered me of that show. I don't know if I was able to just kind of like compartmentalize, like that's a TV show, like it's not real kind of thing. But like the violence, it was a lot. I won't lie. Like I think that's why it took me so long to watch it. It's just because like you were completely on edge the whole time in like every aspect you probably could be. But the violence wasn't what left me every episode like collapsing on my couch like, oh, that was a lot. It was like it was the psychology, like all the brain stuff that was really messing with me more. Plus I feel like I kind of come to expect it from Asian media, that and like even like the superpower type stuff, like when she was jumping across stuff, I was like, yeah, like okay. Like, I kind of like expected those things. Like you see it in anime, you see it in like movies. Like I can think of like multiple just like Asian movies where people have just like these amazing jumping skills where they can go across like the world. So like I kind of just was like, oh, okay, it's like it's Japanese, it's fine. Like I didn't put as much thought into it as much as just like, yeah, okay, that's like it's the genre. But I do get it from like a story perspective. Like it just seemed like it added just like randomness. So I get it.
The violence, Lorraine, you had mentioned about The Last of Us, and like this one affected me differently, the violence did, than The Last of Us did. And we won't have a whole conversation about The Last of Us. Maybe we will at some point. But that one was, like you were saying, Marissa, one of the ones that I had to like every episode take a break and be like, oh, because the violence was brutal and but not gratuitous. It was very specific, and it was it was emotionally damaging intentionally.
Yeah.
And and to that point, and just with violence in media in general, I feel like, you know, if we're just looking for the most effective stimulus, like it's just a race to the top of how
Well.
much violence can we cram in while there's still a semblance of story and character left in it, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's when you end up with The Purge, Assassination
Right.
Nation, you know, just like boom, 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 everyone's killing each other all the time. Maybe there's a plot.
Yeah.
And with this one, I mean, I guess because Scott, when I was younger, I read things like Battle Royale or watched movies when I probably shouldn't have.
Probably shouldn't have.
Well, or at the time when I was beginning to contextualize things like violence, right?
Right.
And you know, I probably was the age of those kids when I read and watched the film. And so it was in a way escapism. I guess like I learned at that point to sort of flip the switch and be like, this is happening fictionally, but like also a way in which I can explore the extremes of my emotional capacity to put myself in the place of these characters and say, oh my God, what would I do? I mean, I think that's the same with Hunger Games in the same context, just in the United States with around the same age group.
Right.
Oh my God, you know, I'm dealing with this day-to-day school stuff and it's terrible. And unfortunately now it's almost as terrible as the fiction. But to sort of explore that emotional capacity, to see what happens, you know, in a safer, I guess, environment of fictional literature and media. But to the extent you also sort of, without guidance, that exploration can turn on itself, right? And sort of desensitize you to these things and say, well, yeah, sure. Like that hero got through it consequence free. He might have killed a couple of people, but what of it? You know, ultimately he's the hero in the end, right? When it's just, we still lack the understanding of something like an anti-hero or like a complete villain that happens to be the protagonist of a story.
Yeah, no,
You know?
I agree with you. Especially in the what would I do kind of thing, because I think that's kind of how I thought about the whole show. And honestly, one of the reasons I really like the show, and I get into debates with people about it quite a bit, because although I don't like Nuragi and Agni, like I feel like they are necessary people, because you get put into the situation where you're like, well, what the heck are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna be this awesome person like blanking on names, like Arasu and Usagi, where they just like want to do everything good for everybody, but like there's also these people that are just like crazy, like the dude that like has the beach, like he's a little weird, like, and then you have people that are just gonna take every chance they can to just be the worst person ever. So like I think it was awesome that you had all of those characters. I do think some of the things were a bit extreme and made me like check out a little bit, but I do think they were important in kind of developing this idea of like what you're gonna do in an extreme situation.
I gotta tell you what, everything you guys just said, the show ends up becoming a love story, right? And and so the show really ends up being optimistic, because all these things, all these people you meet in there, those people are in the place that they call the real world. And I do appreciate that the people who were running the face card games kept trying to let these people know it's no better out there. It's just as bad out there. And there are plenty of characters who say the rules are clearer here. And, you know, people from certain underprivileged groups who just give me some damn clarity. Stop giving me hope when it doesn't work, right? So all those different degrees of freedom in the human condition, hope, desire, fear, hate, it was all there. And in the end, our couple that we would call being more on the side of hope and good are the ones that survive. So it is a moralistic tale at the end, yet it's a moralistic tale where the outcome is earned, right? Because you've been through all these degrees of freedom of love, hate, everything, hope, fear. And when I start to think about it that way, more and more as I get further from the show, it's basically a 20-hour poem, right? I just stay away from the idea that, A connected to B connected to C, and I'm supposed to, no, this was just sampling the human condition, as you said, Rio, earlier, this thought experiment, this one, and y'all hope wins, right? And I'm fine with that, but damn, the stuff they put these people through to get there was amazing. All right, then. So we've got so much to say. It looks like this is going to be part 1 of our discussion of Alice in Borderland. So before we sign off, I'm going to ask each of you to tell everyone where they can find you on social media, if you are so inclined. And we'll start with Lorraine.
Hi, once again, my name is Lorran Garrison. I'm a school psychologist out here in San Diego, California. You can find me and my books at www.littlebrainstorm.com. Thank you so much again for having me, and I look forward to part 2. Thank you again.
Oh, fantastic. So glad you joined us. How about you, Marissa?
Honestly, I don't got nothing for you. I don't have any professional pages or anything. I mean, you can follow me on Instagram if you wanted to. Do I know my handle off the top of my head? Absolutely not. What will it be? It is Marissa Jordan-Lenz on Instagram. There's nothing really there, but feel free to do it.
Thank you so much. How about you, Rio?
Yeah. So you can find some social media stuff under I Know Rio. You can look at it and you can tell me why I haven't posted in 3 or 4 years. But you can find me there, sort of. Yeah, this is fun, and I'm excited to get into the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a fantastic conversation. So big, we've got to go to a part 2. So you can find all episodes of Why Is This So Good on YouTube at the Dark Loops Productions channel. You can also type Dark Loops Productions into the Google machine, and it'll take you to all the places where the podcasts are. So again, thanks to my guests for being here. Look forward to episode 2. And there it is. From all of us to all of you, big hugs, and remember, hope prevails.
Hope prevails.
Hope prevails.
Till next time. Bye-bye.